All right. I'll just open up in prayer and then we can start. Thank you, Father, for this wonderful opportunity to come together with like-minded people, with fellow believers. And Father, we just thank you. We're so privileged in having your word, having your Torah, having the understanding, and also the prophecies, the prophetic books, all the festivals and their prophetic meanings. Father, through your Spirit, revealed to us today, and just make everything one in our minds as they are connected from your point of view, and help us to understand all the symbolism and all the links and all the things associated with this festival. I ask it all in the mighty name of Yeshua HaMashiach. Amen. Yeshua, sorry. All right, so a few questions. So what is the short summary of why do we celebrate Hanukkah? What's it all about? Just want to hear what people think and understand and learn. Just if you have to tell someone in 1 minute what is Hanukkah, what would you say?
It's the dedication of the temple, the
Yeah.
rededication of the temple.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's the idea of the candles, which is not the 7-branch menorah but 9-branch? Is there any?
Well, just that story about in the temple with the oil.
Miracle of the oil.
The miracle of the oil.
The 8 days.
Yeah, and the 8 days.
The 8
Yeah.
days, yeah, the oil for 8 days.
Consecrate the temple.
Yeah.
Takes 8 days.
But we've heard somebody say, oh, that's just a story. They don't know if it's true. But
Of the oil.
yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway.
It's a nice story.
It's a nice story.
Yeah.
No, it's not to say it didn't happen, but we're going to look at that, where that comes from. So main focus of Hanukkah, I've got a little picture. I think I'll just jump to that first. I've got some from the previous Torah portion. I just want to do it in context. So this is a 9-branch menorah. And what you note there is I've put the 7 festivals on there, and I've added the 8th and the 9th one, which is Chanukkah and Purim. The reasons those two belong, it's all about the rededication of the temple and the preparation of the house. And Purim is about the household or the bride, and it's all about the preparation. So they both actually have the same theme. One is just focusing on the house that contains the presents, and the other festival focuses on the bride and coming before the king in the house, which is Purim. So, and if you look at it like that, the 7 festivals are like 7 stepping stones that lead up to these two. So people that say, no, they're not in the Torah, we're not going to do them, actually missing the point. Because you need to understand the spiritual and prophetic meaning of every single festival to put them into context. And into saying that as well, everything that happens with Israel that's historic is prophetic as well. And any historical event has got a prophetic picture and symbolism associated with it. So the event that happened in the time of the Maccabees, the history of that is prophetic as well. And we're going to overlay that with the book of Revelation, just to show you how we can glean more information from the book of Maccabees to fill the gaps within the prophecies of Daniel and Revelation. And the link is Matthew 24, that link all of this together. So Hanukkah is all about the end times. That's what it's one of my favorite festivals. And one of the things that I've liked to study, I like to study the end times. And we need to know where we are, where we're going in the time frame. And
we like going into it, aren't we?
yeah, it's all about preparation. So in my heart, I feel it's all about preparing because something is going to happen. So the rededication of the temple, you can take personally. I'm the temple, I need to prepare. But it's also the preparation of the bride. It's also preparation of the household, which is us, which are other fellowships. They need to prepare as a collective group. And then collectively, we need to prepare as the bride to receive
You
the
know,
Messiah.
also something, Philip, have you noticed what the latest thing of the latest speeches today? Reset, reset,
Yeah.
preparation, my brother. Reset is preparation. You've got to, if you want to reset, you must be prepared. That's the whole thing. And it's quite amazing that this all falls into this last era of time. There's people all shouting, we're going to have to reset, reset. Yeah, we're going to have to reset.
We are going to reset. If you want to or not, the big reset's coming. And there's a spiritual reset that's going to happen as well.
Yeah.
And these last two festivals just form part of that time frame. What you can note here is that Hanukkah is the 8th festival. It coincides with the 8th day of Sukkot, or the Grey Day, which is all about the 8th day or the new cycle that's starting. And Hanukkah is also about the dedication of the temple that took 8 days, and that coincides with the 8 days of Sukkot as well. So we're going to look a bit at that as well. But before we jump into this, I just want to jump back to the Torah portion of last week, not this week's, because you mentioned you want to discuss the piece of Esau and all that. So just for the index sake, so Jacob sent gifts to his brother before he met him, and then Jacob wrestles with Yahweh or with an angel or whatever people think it might be, and then he met Esau. Now that whole process of leading up to meeting Esau is also referred to as Jacob's trouble. And Jacob's trouble is another name for the Great Tribulation. So everything in this Torah portion is all about the preparation that Jacob did prior to meeting his brother, which is that conflict. And in that conflict, there was the kiss of Esau. And that was a prophetic message to the future Jacob or Israel, and how he's going to meet with his brother in the future. And then the rest of the Torah portion, the rape of Dinah and all that, just going down. And Jacob returns to Bethel, where he had the vision of the ladder and vision of Yahweh, and then the birth of Benjamin and the death of Rachel. So those are the highlights. But the thing I want to highlight here is the concept of Jacob's trouble in context of the end times. All right, so when he met Esau came with 400 men. So 400 is the letter Tav. And if you add Esau, it's 1, which is Aleph. So that makes Aleph Tav. So in the time of distress, Esau and the 400 men coming, Yahweh's in disguise. In this case, that's a symbolism of Yeshua. So even in the most terrible time, he's always present, and he's closer than you think. Jacob expected his brother to fight with him. At the end of the day, he was actually wrestling with Yahweh. So Yahweh was closer than you think. So this bad time that's coming, it's called Jacob's trouble. We're going to meet Yahweh in a very close encounter. We're going to see miracles. We're going to see things that we don't see now. We're just in the preparation phase. But as they happen, we will have an encounter with him in the same way. Now, there are other things that I'm going to look at this one. This is just a gematria of the 401 that associate with some of the concepts of going through Jacob's trouble. It points to Yeshua. It's also prison or guard room or chamber, to curse and to secure in a bad sense, and carelessness. So those are some negative meanings of the gematria of 401. And the positive ones are together with or near, that's drawing near to Yahweh, miracles, signs and wonders, and a plowshare, which is basically preparing the ground. So the time of the tribulation is where Yahweh will do his work of the harvest. That's another title of the Great Tribulation, is the harvest, because that's where the angels will come with a sickle and harvest the nations. So the concept of the harvest, specifically the fall festivals, is also about the harvest. And we take part in the harvest because we are the laborers. So that's why the laborers can't be raptured, because someone needs to do the work in harvesting the nations during that time of the harvest. So it doesn't make sense, the rapture doctrines that they have. It doesn't fit the symbolism of Yahweh's patterns that he has within his Moedim. So they miss the point completely, not understanding the completeness of Scripture. Now, also associated with Aleph Tav is Jacob crossed over. He crossed over in the fort of the Yabok. Now, Yabok means emptying, and that emptying is symbolic of humility, to humble yourself, to empty yourself out. If you want to truly study the word of Yahweh, you need to empty yourself from all your bad doctrines and rubbish that you were, gathering throughout your life, and little things you cling on, that make up your little religion. You need to let go, and he will fill you then. So it's all about the emptying process. And Jacob's preparation prior to having that encounter, or the preparation prior to have that great tribulation encounter, is all about humility. We need to empty ourselves in order to prepare for when that time comes. It's the humble that will reign, not the pride. If you lift yourself up against the things of Yahweh and you don't work with him and his will, you'll be on his bad side. It's the humble and the meek who understand his word, who actually go and search, not those ones who are arrogant to think they know everything, and they don't even bother to celebrate the festivals, to learn about them. It's all about arrogance and about the ego at the end of the day, because they can't admit that they were wrong once. I believed in the rapture, the preach of rapture before, and I had to change my mind. So that's the humbling experience that we go through, is to empty yourself out as you learn new truth. Now, the numerical value, or the gematria of Yabok, is 112. What's interesting, it's 11 and 2, so the 11 sons and the 2 wives crossed over. That's just a simple connection there. But also 112 is 26 plus 86, and that's Yotevave is 26 and Elohim is 86. So crossing the Yabok, he met Yahweh Elohim just through that connection. So meeting with Esau, it was 401, which is Aleph Tav. Crossing the Yabok is Yahweh Elohim. So he had that encounter in that humbling experience. So you will meet with Yahweh Elohim if you humble yourself. And that's the lesson we learned from that. Not only that, Abraham's name was changed. He had a hay inserted. When Jacob's name was changed, his name was changed to Yisrael. So Abraham received a letter, and Jacob only hang on to one letter, which is the Yod. He lost all his letters. So that means that he was completely emptied from his old character. He only held on to the Yod. And what does that mean? It's the invisible hand of Yahweh. That's all he had left. And if you combine those two, the hay and the Yod, it's Yah, which is short for Yahweh. So Yahweh was with him when he wrestled with him, and he met with Yahweh when his name was changed to Israel. Not only that, he fled from Esau when he left his father's house, which Esau was referred to as Edom, which is red. You can see there's the Aleph Dalet Mem, Edom, which is red. And then he went to his uncle Laban, or Lavan. It's got a Lamed, and the Lamed and the Aleph makes El. So yet again, you see, in the midst of running from his enemies, because Laban chased him or followed him when he left with his wives and children and everything, and he was coming from behind, and Esau was meeting from the front. So he was in between the two enemies, and Elohim was there. So that's another symbolism. And what's interesting is the colors, the red and the white. And I've got the picture there of Yeshua. The colors is red and white. And that's when Messiah will appear in the midst of when we are bombarded with enemies. When we are in the midst, the commander will come, and he will have the colors of the white and the red. The colors of the anti-Messiah is not white and red. it's white and white. And if you read Laban the other way around, it means full, an empty jar. And that's the opposite of what white means, that's righteousness. So the people who appear in righteousness, or the archer with the bow without arrows, seem to be the Messiah, but he's Lavan. He's a fool and full of emptiness because he doesn't have any arrows, only have a bow. So he's got the appearance of having power, but his power's been taken away from him. Only thing he can do is lie. And that's a symbolism of an arrow, is to shoot words from behind. Nobody sees it. And when the arrow hits someone, it's like slander. You don't know where it comes from. It was arrows shot at you. So he had his whole quiver full of lies that he already shot. He's got none left. He's been exposed as the father of lies. He doesn't have any ammo left to shoot any more arrows. He's been exposed. And that's a symbolism that we find in Revelation. The rider on the white horse with a bow without arrows. So in all of this, it's just to show us that Yahweh is with us, Elohim is with us, Yeshua is with us, as we go through this bad time, which is still to come. So don't worry about anything.
I mean, we even saw it even during COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Fine.
Yeah.
Most of us are just fine. Yeah.
So fear not. The keys of Esau. So that's the word. This is the phrase, which is Wayisa Kehu. That means kiss. And he kissed. That's the word, or the phrase, and he kissed. And above that phrase are those little dots. And they are the teeth marks that symbolizes Jacob, Esau's kiss, which is a bite in the neck.
I love bite.
There's a hate bite.
That's a lot of bite.
So this was a prophetic sign to Jacob that his descendants will be the enemies of Jacob's descendants. And they will have conflict when there's another Jacob's trouble, which is at the end. So that's where Israel will be in conflict with the descendants of Esau. And at the time of the second coming, prior to the second coming. So that's the keys of Esau. Now, what's interesting about these jots, and that's in Matthew, that say, not one jot or tittle will pass away. Now, these are actually the jots, part of the jots, little marks. Now, there's 4 other places where there are jots, or actually 3 others. The first one is here in Genesis 33:4. There's 3 others, and if we look at where they are found, it basically tells us a little story. Now, the first one is about the birthright and the conflict between the 2 brothers, and the conflict that will exist at the end as well, because it's always about the birthright. The second place it's found is in Genesis 37:12. And this is in relation to Joseph's life. And Joseph's life is the most accurate picture of Yeshua, the Messiah, and specifically the work of his first coming. And this is a picture where Yeshua is the rock of our salvation. And he's depicted as the savior and the protector of the covenant. Now, this picture of Joseph going into Egypt, his brothers didn't recognize him. So he was hidden within the nation that placed his family, or the whole world actually, into bondage. And he was actually in the midst of that, just like Esau and his 400 men was Yeshua in disguise, because he's in the midst of that. In the same way, Joseph was in the midst of that whole situation. He was actually a leader that dictated what needed to happen during that. So that just shows us that Yahweh is always in control. Even with the New World Order and all that, he's still in control. He allows this because it's part of the things that need to happen. And sometimes he just gives them enough ropes that can hang themselves. And that's the type of control that he's got. So that's the symbolism of that. The second one, it's a revelation of Yeshua, but from a concept of that is hidden. Now, I just want to emphasize that, because we're going to a bit later on look at the king of the north and the king of the south. And there's some connection there. So keep that in the back of your mind. The next place the jots are found is in Numbers 33 verse 39, where Yahweh appointed the firstborn from Israel, which are the Levites that were numbered. Now, as you know, the Levites, they received the birthright on behalf of the families. So it was moved from the firstborn of every family, and it moved to the Levites. So they represented the firstborn, and that's why there was an offering for the firstborn as well to signify this. And this gives us the concept of the anointed ones, because the Levites were anointed. They carried the birthright. And as we discussed in the previous Torah portion, the function of the birthright was to look after the family after the father's death. And they were also fulfilling the priestly function, which is basically the function of the Levites. And they had the double portion to look after the family. And their task was to transfer the knowledge of Yahweh to the next generation. And that's the function of the Levites as well. They facilitate that. And today, within our time frame, we get that through the gifts of the Spirit and the anointing of Yahweh's people under the order of Melchizedek. So we are a priesthood as anointed followers of Yeshua the Messiah. We are priests, so to speak, because we will facilitate the knowledge of Yahweh to the next generation or to the nations that will come in. That's part of the harvest, is to teach the nations. So we'll look at some Hebrew symbolism to demonstrate that as we look at this King of the North and King of the South that's coming. So it's all about looking after the household and the anointing of being able to do that. So that's where the other jots are found. The last place where I've found is in Deuteronomy 29, verse 29, chapter 29. And it's all about the secret things and the revealed things. That is the interesting concept. Also to do with the King of the North, King of the South. So I'm going to keep you hanging until a bit later, but just hang on there. So the revealed things is things that we read in the Torah, but the hidden things are revealed through his Spirit. And those are basically the prophecies and how they come to pass, because everything that's need to be said is already said. There are no new prophetic words regarding the Messiah. It's all written. We just need to find the right interpretation. People might have a prophetic word for someone, but that's personal. It's not to do with prophecy. It's more about supporting the body through that word, other than anything to do with Messiah. So the hidden things are the important things that need to be revealed. Now, if you just look at the Torah scroll, if you look at the black letters on the white paper, there's more white surface area than black surface area on any part of the scroll. And the white parts of the scroll are the hidden things that are not said.
Between the lines.
But they connect the letters and the words that are the revealed things. And if you look at the meanings of the letters within the word, and you go a bit deeper using the Hebrew language and symbolism, then the white space between the black letters start to come out, and they contain wisdom. In the same way, the white space between words, or the white space between chapters. So there's a lot of things that's not said, because if Yahweh had to reveal everything about himself, there's not enough books to write it down. And we don't have the intelligence to actually absorb that and even understand that. He gave us just enough for us to start the journey. And as we grow, we will receive a bit more revelation, and then our eyes can adjust to actually understand and see a bit more of that. And it takes years, it actually takes a lifetime to have some sort of a grasp of who he is, what his plan is for me, why do I exist, what's the thing about why is Yahweh angry and why is he coming and why did he die and all that. That's just basics. The information about his real character and things, what happened before the creation and all that, those are hidden things, but we will know them, and we need eternity to understand them. So that's why we will have a jolly time after the smoke clears to learn all about those things. In this case, it's about the revelation of the hidden things, which is who is the Messiah. Now, all the prophets and all the Jews always wanted who's the Messiah, and they some believe in every generation there's a Mashiach, but there's actually only one. And there's two main prophecies that reveal the Messiah: the suffering servant and the king that reigns. Mashiach ben Yosef, which is the servant, and Mashiach ben David is the king on the horse. So they were looking at the second coming prophetic picture of Mashiach. That's why they missed the servant. They weren't looking for a servant because they were in conflict and in bondage under the Roman Empire, and they wanted the king to release them and to free them from this bondage. And because they had a need, they missed the point. I use the word need because that's linked to the king of the north and south, so park that one. It's all about, if I just can make a little example here, every one of us look at the world through our own needs. We only see things based on what we need. We connect with people to fill the gaps and the needs we have inside of us. And we try to get the information or whatever we need from them. So we are need driven, and we are basically under the bondage of being needy, or under the bondage of being people that desire things or desire answers or desire something, because we have lack where we are. We're not in the fullness of abundance understanding, but we are on the opposite side, in a place of need, and there's gaps and holes and lack of understanding, and the two need to connect to flow and to fill all the gaps that's inside of us. So that's what's going to happen at the end, where everything will become one again. So you'll see that a bit later on with the king of the north, king of the south. I've actually started that study on the king of the north and south after we had the Conrad.
Yeah, because we bumped into him recently.
Yeah.
And they said they come again.
Yeah.
They said they come again. They just lots of stuff.
Yeah, he works away about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he should have been here today
Yeah.
to get a different take on the king of north and south. All right, so this is just a menorah. I'm not going to go back into that. I've already discussed that. Just the history of Hanukkah or Chanukkah. Chanukkah means dedication. The word actually means that. That word dedication, Feast of Dedication, is also found in the New Testament because Yeshua celebrated the Feast of Dedication. But on the other hand, when we did the study on Sukkot, I think there's 5 different names for the Feast of Sukkot. And one of them is the Festival of Lights, and the other one is the Festival of Dedication. And those are names that belongs to Sukkot. So Hanukkah actually borrowed some of the aspects of Sukkot. And the Festival of Lights during Sukkot is also to do with lighting the menorahs and lighting everything up. So there's a connection there. So we're going to look at what the connection is, just to look at the history. Now, the rededication of the temple is built around the history of the Maccabees. Now, you all know the Maccabees. I'm not going to go into there. So there were 3 brothers, Simon, Judah, and Jonathan, Maccabees. That means hammers. And they were war heroes after the battle was won against the Romans. Now, the reason why the book of the Maccabees is not in scripture or not in the Tanakh is because they specifically, who was it? I think it was Jonathan. Now, Jonathan appointed himself as a king and a high priest. He took on both. The people saw them all as kings or as leaders, but he decided, I'm going to be high priest as well. And that upset the rabbis. So they decided not to give honor to these brothers because of that heresy that Jonathan committed. And they refused to put the history in there. So they just focus on the spiritual side of the history of the Maccabees. And that's why it's all about the temple and the menorah and so forth. So the historical event place too much emphasis on the brothers and what they've done, and I don't want to give them more credit that is due based on what they wanted. So that's a bit of a reason why it's not in the Tanakh. The Catholics did put it in the first attempt of the King James Bible, and then they took it out because it's probably too much Jewish, and they didn't want that. The story of the oil that lasted for 8 days is found in the scroll, which is Nagila Ta'anit, which is the scroll of fasting. That's where the evidence is of the oil and the miracle of the oil. Whether it's accurate or not is debatable, because that scroll was only written years after the event. Years after the event was Jonathan and the rabbis who took the book out of the Tanakh. So I don't know if the rabbis focus so much on the story, and as we know in the Talmud, they create a lot of stories to explain certain concepts to people, but they color it in such a way as if it is the truth or historically accurate. So I don't think there was an 8-day miracle. It might be, but it was not recorded in the book of Maccabees. It was found in the scroll afterwards. So there's nothing wrong if you celebrate the miracle of the oil. There's just a bit of a speculation whether it's accurate or not. The book of the Maccabees is actually, not the book of Maccabees, the festival of Hanukkah is celebrated on the month of Kislev, which is a bit later than the festival of Sukkot, which is in Tishri. And the reason why they dedicated the temple, they actually used the feast of Sukkot, and they celebrated that late in the month of Kislev, because the feast of Sukkot is the feast that they normally and historically used to dedicate the temple. They waited till Sukkot in order to dedicate the temple. And there's some evidence there in 2 Chronicles chapter 7 that they've done that over an 8-day period during the Feast of Sukkot. There's also in 2 Chronicles 30, because you might think, oh, they celebrate late, Yahweh will be upset about it. So it doesn't make sense. But in 2 Chronicles 30, there's evidence that there was a late Passover. And the king, who was it? King Hezekiah ordered Passover to be celebrated in the second month, and he kept it for 2 7-day periods. So he not only celebrated late, he modified it as 2 7-day events. And in the writings, it says that Yahweh was pleased because the intent.
I think it's about the heart.
Yeah, they had some reason why they did it late, but at least they did it and they honored Yahweh with it. They didn't do it 100% accurately, but they tried their best. So in saying that is that we're in a different time zone. People that nitpick about when is Passover, it's this day and that day, and there's a lot of people who fight about it. It doesn't matter. As long as you try your best, even if you don't do it 100% right, it's okay. Yahweh is still happy about it. And we've got these two incidents that confirm that. So Hanukkah is a late Sukkot. So it's not something that sits outside of the Torah as people think. It's just a delayed Sukkot. So changing gears to the prophetic meaning of Daniel, I'm just going to quickly jump through this because this might be a bit too much. The main idea is that it's all about the prophecy in Daniel. And the prophecy in Daniel was referred to by Yeshua when they asked him when is the time of the end. And he referred to the prophecy that Daniel prophesied, but that prophecy was fulfilled by the events that happened with the Maccabees. So that means that Yeshua referred to a prophecy that was already fulfilled, and then he revealed it will be fulfilled at the end again. So that means that the end time events and the history of the Maccabees are of the same pattern. And whatever happened during the Maccabees, historically, is got prophetic significance for us as well. And we can pull forward into the end times and we can learn about what might happen in the end times based on the history, because it's prophetic cycles. And the prophecy can be fulfilled more than once because it's a prophetic pattern or a cycle that's fulfilled. It's not to say that it's a real one, because the big one is still coming. And a lot of people are stuck in their minds. Prophecy can only be fulfilled once. Well, that won't happen. So we don't know what's going to come in the future, because all of these things are already fulfilled. And that's why our friend made the comment and said there's only one prophecy that still needs to be fulfilled, and that's Yeshua's second coming. Everything else being fulfilled. But Yeshua said, no, there's still Daniel's prophecy need to be fulfilled. Because in their minds, 1844 was that fulfillment of that prophecy. And I'll show you some newspaper clippings of that event that happened and what happened with those people who cling on to that prophecy or that interpretation.
1944?
Yeah.
What did they say happened?
Oh, the second coming, Messiah.
He was supposed to come. This was his, yeah, he was supposed to
So the
come in
FCA's picked
1944.
up the pieces afterwards. I think the guy's name was Miller.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they say what happened. He prepared the sanctuary. Is that what he did?
No, they
Yeshua.
just
Changed.
give it another
He
meaning.
did a year pass by and continued on.
Yeah. And now he was doing something in the heaven.
Yeah, he's cleansing the sanctuary since 1844 because the sanctuary is very dirty. Don't know. Anyway, not going in there now, but that's the context between Daniel, Hanukkah, because Yeshua referred to the prophecy that was fulfilled by the events of Hanukkah or the Maccabees. And it all relates to the statue of Daniel. And we had the head of gold, which is Babylon, breast of silver, Medo-Persian, belly of brass, the grease or the breastplate, and the legs of iron is Rome, and the feet and toes, iron and clay is the divided Roman kingdom. Now the 10 toes have been revealed after the Roman Empire broke up into 10 kings or commanders throughout history. And from Augustus to Titus, there were 10. I just highlighted Titus because it's significant regarding the destruction of the temple. Now, what's interesting is that the temple was destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar in 586, and also during the time of the 10th toe, which is Titus, which is 700 years later. And it both happened on Tisha B'Av, which is the 9th of Av. And that's why the Jews celebrate the 9th of Av as a fast. And that's also recorded in the book of the fast that we just looked at. So since then, there was never a temple again from the destruction of the temple during the time of Titus. The prophecy continues in saying there was a large stone, that's Daniel 2 verse 34, that hit the toes and the feet and destroyed the whole statue that fell over. Now the symbolism of the statue are the kingdoms of the world throughout history, and the 10 toes is the last kingdom prior to the second coming of Messiah, and he will come and destroy it, and then the rock will, or the stone will grow and cover the whole earth. And that's the revelation of Yeshua taking control of the kingdoms of the earth and taking the kingdoms back. This also relates to the king of the north and south that we're going to look at a bit later. It's all about taking back. All right, so that's that one. Daniel 8 talks about we've got a ram and a goat. Ram had 2 horns. That's a Medo-Persia partnership, if you like. And then the he-goat with 1 horn came and destroyed it. And that one horn was none other than Alexander the Great. Later on, it said that the horn was broken. That's Daniel 8 verse 8. And then came 4 outstanding ones, which are 4 horns towards the 4 wings of heaven. So from Alexander the Great, he was broken off. He died when he was in his 30s after he conquered the known earth. And when he died, these 4 commanders took charge. And their names I probably can't pronounce. It's Antiochus of Epiphany, which the story of the Maccabees is about. Lysimachus, Seleucus, and Ptolemy. They were the 4 generals. Now, Antiochus and Ptolemy, and also the other 2, they were in conflict with one another, and Jerusalem was right in the middle of the area of the conflict. And that's why Jerusalem was important to them. And that's where the conflict played out. And that's why they actually destroyed the temple and took over that area as well. It was part of their conquering quest. And this is where we read about the king of the south, which is in this case Ptolemy the 6th, and he was from Egypt. And the king of the north was Antiochus, and he was, as you can see on the map, he was from the north, Ptolemy was from the south. So there we have king of the north, king of the south, end of story. So historically, we already have the king of the north and king of the south identified, but in the same way, there's a prophetic pattern that will be fulfilled in the future again. So the question is, who's the king of the north and who's the king of the south? Now, I just want to make a little statement here. In the same way we think about the Antichrist or anti-Messiah, do you think it's a person? A specific person that will be? Or can the anti-Messiah be in different generations?
Or
Spirit.
It says in the Bible it's been,
So it's the spirit of the Antichrist. So in the same way, there's a spirit of the king of the north and a spirit of the king of the south. And the spirit will influence someone within a generation to fulfill the function of what that king stands for. And that's what the spirit of the anti-Messiah is also about.
So it's not tied geographically to these.
Yeah, so try to speculate who it is. It's the person, it's the nation. Yeah, you might get it right, but I think after the fact we'll have 20/20 vision, and then we can pinpoint it. That's the way prophecy normally works. You can speculate beforehand. There might be various people that might be that, or nations or whatever, but it's a spiritual thing. But in saying that, the king of the north, king of the south is greater than the commanders that existed in this time frame. So it's a larger spirit that sits behind it. So we're going to look at that in a moment. We're going to look at the king of the north, king of the south. All right, moving on. So soon after taking over, on his way to invade Egypt, Antiochus invaded Israel. And then he basically, it says in Daniel 8, verse 9 to 14, and out of them came forth the little horn, which became very great towards the south, toward the east, toward the north, and the beautiful land. And it came great, even to the host of heavens, and it made fall some of the host of the stars to the ground and trampled them. Now that's a very interesting verse, because the word star also means angel. Now, he said he was great even to the host of heaven. It sounds like when the passage that depicts Lucifer, that said, I will be as the Most High. I will make my throne above the congregation of the Most High. It's about elevating yourself to a high state. And the language sound the same. And this little horn was basically Antiochus. He's the little horn that came out of the big horn, which is Alexander the Great. And he was the one who exalted himself as ruler of the host. He magnified himself even to the ruler of the host, and the daily sacrifice was taken away by him. And the place of the sanctuary was cast down, and an army was given to him against the daily sacrifice because of the transgression. And he was cast the truth, and it cast the truth to the ground. So the truth is basically the Torah. And he persecuted everybody who had anything to do with the temple, the reading of the Torah, circumcision, everything to do with what Yahweh commanded. He persecuted them. His main purpose in conquering the world, the known world, was to Hellenize them. Now, Hellenizing means to make them Greek, to give them a Greek way of thinking, and to adhere to their Greek philosophy and a modern way of thinking from his point of view. Now, unfortunately for us, the Hellenizing continued, and the whole of the Western culture is the Hellenized Greek culture that started back then. So we're products of that process that started. And that process that started was done by a spirit that worked through Antiochus. And this spirit had the same language as Lucifer, which is also the spirit of the Antichrist, that elevated him above Yahweh's things and defiled Yahweh's things and then persecuted Yahweh's people. That's the spirit of the Antichrist. And that was the spirit that was behind Antiochus. And he was the king of the north. So the king of the north in this context is Lucifer on a spiritual level. And that spirit can sit behind any command or any king within whatever generation. Even Paul said, and I think Yeshua said the same, that the spirit of the Antichrist already within our midst. Even within his time, just after his first coming, the spirit of the Antichrist was at work. And this was a couple of, I think it was maybe 100 years or whatever, prior to the first coming of Messiah, when this event happened. And the spirit of the Antichrist is alive and well.
It's funny, people looking for a specific person, not a series of policies and stuff that are there to control people as that spirit
Some
of
kind
Antichrist.
of fruit that comes out of a person to show what spirit they're operating under.
So my gut feel tells me, if we listen to politicians or leaders, if they use the same language, we know that the spirit of Lucifer is working through them. And they might be the one that the spirit of the Antichrist is manifesting through. It might be multiple people through multiple nations. We should not be deceived in trying to find one single person,
Have you listened
because
to
it's a
the
spirit.
PM of Canada?
Eh?
The Canadian Prime Minister?
No?
Yeah, he's all about the reset and normalizing certain things.
Yeah.
Strong.
So the other attribute of the spirit is the Hellenizing of the world through Greek thinking, Greek culture, Greek philosophy, which is basically humanistic thinking. It's not based on Yahweh's Torah, it's based on human rights. So every government is basically pulling out of the idea of Yahweh's 10 commandments as the basis of the government system, and they bring in human reasoning. It's all about humans. That's why everybody can be treated equally. Doesn't matter where you're associating or identifying with whatever gender or whatever you do, because it's all about us. It's all about love. The message of love is basically the humanistic agenda.
Some of that Greek Hellenistic thinking is what I can see in my has blinded me to the truth of the Torah over the years.
Yeah.
It's that way of thinking, and which makes you accept that you just love everybody, or what it always
Like
different
what you
things.
said
Yeah.
the other day
They're
with
so
Glenn,
logical.
Glenn not wanting the kids to
Yeah.
learn
but
the grace.
Yeah. All right, so this little horn stopped the daily sacrifice. He threw the truth to the ground. Now, if you read Maccabees, it actually recorded that, and he said, and he went up against Israel and Jerusalem with a great multitude. He entered proudly into the sanctuary and took away the golden altar, the candlestick of light, which is the menorah, and the vessels thereof, and the table of showbread, and the pouring vessels, and the vials, censers of gold, and the veil, and the crown, and the golden ornaments that were before the temple, all which he pulled off. And he also took the silver and the gold and precious vessels, and he took the hidden treasures which he found. And we read in the prophecy in the previous slide, we get the number in verse 14, and he said to me, for 2,300 evenings and mornings, then the sanctuary will be vindicated, which is another word for justified or to make blameless. So that means there will be 2,300 mornings and evenings until the sanctuary is rededicated. So this is the history of the Maccabees. And that 2,300 days got Miller into trouble. He counted from, I don't know which event, 2,300 years, and ended up in 1844.
Because they have the belief that the 1,000 years is a day, but they make that for
Everything
Yeah.
same,
Yeah.
one shoe fits
Okay.
all.
Yeah.
And that's where you start to set dates.
Mm.
And if you start setting dates, you'll be in trouble. So they were in great trouble. The other thing is they misinterpreted this number. It talks about mornings and evenings specifically because it referred to the sacrifices that were stopped. So 2,300 mornings and evenings, the number of days is half that because there were 2 sacrifices on each day. So it's actually not 2,300 years. It's 1,150 years if you want to interpret it in the sense of years. In this case, it's 1,150 days, which is just over 3 years if you just look at it on a normal calendar. And when we look at that, which is the prophetic number from Daniel, and we look at the actual events of the Maccabees, the image was set up in the temple on the 15th day of Kislev in the year 176 BCE, and he defiled the temple by sacrificing pig on the altar. And that date started at 2,300 mornings and evenings, where he stopped the sacrifices. And then there were battles for 3 years. And after that, they cleansed the temple and rededicated it on the 25th of Kislev in 164 BCE, which is exactly 1,105 days after the abomination of desolation was first erected. So they're only missing, 45 days between the events. So that's very close to say that that 3-year period that was prophesied by Daniel and the actual 3-year period that happened during the time of the Maccabees, the only difference is 45 days. So what does that 45 days represent? Because that's, in some people say there's a discrepancy, so it can't be.
Isn't that mentioned in Revelation? And those who...
There's a 45 days there as well. So that link automatic. So that gives the history of the Maccabees weight and value because the numbers align with Daniel and with Revelation. Now, what happened is that the 45 days is the time sequence, and this is my interpretation, between the stopping of the sacrifices and the setting up of the image. Because when they set up the image, that's where they proclaimed that they are the rulers. But they stopped the sacrifice and defiled everything. And then was the time before they set up the image. Now, we always wondered, okay, if you read Daniel, is that going to happen on the same day? Stop the sacrifice and then they set up the abomination of desolation. It's not the same day. There's a time period of roughly a month that will happen. If you read Matthew 24, that's when Yeshua said, when you see these things, flee into the mountains. So when we see the sacrifices starting and they stop it, you've got 45 days to get out of the system before the image of the abomination set up, which is the marking of the rule of the Antichrist, where the persecution will start. So we've got a 45-day head start before the rain will start, where the persecution will start. And people who don't know that will sit there and wait for the image, and it might be too late. So we need to be sure that we watch for the sacrifices starting and then stopping. When it stops, it counts 45 days or get your stuff in order and just get out of the system. We pick a mountain. I said that one was good. Pick a mountain. No, it doesn't need to be a mountain. I think a mountain referred to a high place which deals with Yahweh's things symbolically. So it's about assembling. When you look at the pattern of leaving Egypt, the first place they went to when they left Egypt was the place called Sukkot. Now, the Jews want to start sacrifices on a Passover. That's when they will start the sacrifices. That's where I put my money on. It's not to say it's going to be like that. I speculate that. And the reason I speculate that if you count 1,260 days from a Passover, we end up on the trumpets. That's 3.5 years into the future. And trumpets is when the Messiah will come, and 3.5 years back, the starting point will be a Passover. So in the season of Passover, that's why we don't set dates. We observe seasons. We observe Passover season, and we watch the sacrifices. If it starts, they will go on the Temple Mount, have their temporary altar going up. The Levites are already trained. They will do the Passover sacrifice. And probably after that, they will do the red heifer sacrifice to cleanse the area to start building the temple. So when the opposer will come and chase them off and stop the sacrifices, that's when we have 45 days. Because then the image will be set up, and the image, I think, will be a person who will speak the words of blasphemy. Back in the time of the Maccabees, it was the statue of Zeus. Now, Zeus is the Greek equivalent of Yeshua. So it's the anti-Messiah, the anti-Yeshua. The one will be in the place. And when the image will be set up, that's where the Antichrist will start his rule for 1,260 days. And then after that, the Messiah will appear after that period. So this is the little timeline here of the Maccabees. And then we have the 1,150 days and 1,105 days, which are 3.15 years and 3 years. And there's a 45-day period there. So this is just my interpretation of overlapping the two events. There are also other days, 1,209 days, 1,260 days, that we'll look at in a moment. All right, so Daniel 8:14, and he said to me, for 2,300 evenings and mornings, then the sanctuary shall be vindicated, which is justified or rededicated. Now, in the time of Yeshua, Matthew 24:15, he said, so when you see standing in the holy place the abomination of desolation described by the prophet Daniel, let the reader understand, and let those in Judea flee to the mountains. So the reason for the sacrifices and the image, that's basically two witnesses. So if you just see the one, you can say, yeah, it might be, might not be. When you see the second thing, that's confirmed. So we have sort of a pre-start on what we might expect, but it will be confirmed as soon as we see the image set up. So I think if we probably gather together, that's the idea of a Sukkot, when people get out of the system dwelling tents. So that's the intent of fleeing to the mountain, is to assemble together, and then you watch and see if it's the real image. If not, you go back to your house and just wait for next year or whenever that happens. So we need that second confirmation before you can actually start counting from that Passover onwards. So that's that verse in Matthew 24. Now the king of the south, Daniel 11 verse 5, he said, also the king of the south shall become strong, as well as the one of his princes, and he shall gain power over him and have dominion. And his dominion shall be a great dominion. So this is historically Ptolemy, one of the four generals. But if we want to see what south actually means, now we're going to get to the higher level of king of the south and north. South is the word negeb, that means south country, and to be parched. The root word means to be parched or to be thirsty. This word is first found in scripture in Genesis 12 verse 9, where Abraham traveled to the south and he went down to Egypt because of a famine. Now the theme of the famine is also found in the Torah portion that started with Joseph. There was famine in the land. So at the end, he sent, Jacob sent his sons to Egypt to buy food. So the concept of the famine and the dreams that Joseph interpreted is also prophetic in nature, but he saw 7 skinny cows and 7 fat cows. And there was 7 years of prosperity, 7 years of famine. And the 7 years of prosperity preceded, so he was preparing. And Egypt was the only place who actually had enough food for the whole known world. And everybody came down, just like Abram did, to the king of the south to get their substance. And what we learned from the root word for south, it means to be parched, to be thirsty. If you think about the concept of being thirsty, water is the primary thing we need to survive. You can last a bit longer without food, but you can't last, I think, more than 3 days without water, and you'll start to get in trouble. So the concept of thirsting gives us the idea that there's a lack or a need that is life-threatening if you don't get it. And the thirst or the lack exists within the idea of the South country, which is Egypt. So that means that people who are in bondage in the South area or the South country are basically in lack and in need for the sustenance that they need for life. So what the opposer does, he brings us down under bondage and bring people into Egypt and keep them there and don't give them any sustenance. Now that's evident in the body of Messiah today. People die spiritually in churches. They don't get fed. They are parched, they are thirsty for the truth and for the word, and they don't get any sustenance. And that's the symbolism of Egypt and the methods of the king of the south, how he rule over them and how he keeps them in bondage. And the picture of that king is Pharaoh, and that picture of the king is Lucifer. If you look at the bigger picture.
Just an interesting, I was just rereading last week's Parsha before I read the next one today, and just noticed that a little footnote in the Complete Jewish Bible on, when Benjamin was born and Rachel died, and she named him Benoni, and his father renamed him Benjamin. And in the footnote it says it means son of my right hand, but it also means son of the south. He said that there. He was the only son born outside of Laban's territory, there. I just thought that's interesting because you're talking about the south. I don't know anything else about it, but it just mentioned that the rabbis say it also means that son of the south.
So south is symbolic of Egypt. Egypt, we know, is the place of bondage. And they've got the Nile, but ironically, that's where they are very thirsty, because it's not the physical water you need the spiritual water. They are dying spiritually, but they're prospering physically. In the same, today in the church, it's all about prosperity. So physically, they prosper and they seek and desire things. So that the South country is a place of desire, which is a bondage in itself, because the desire is focused on physical things, not on spiritual things. And that's where the deception comes in. And the people of Yahweh are thirsty for truth, which is not found within Egypt. There's only physical prosperity and physical water, but there's lack and desire, and they can't satisfy that thirst other than getting it from Yahweh. Now the word cow, just looking at the symbolism of the dream that Joseph interpreted, cow is the word parah, that means heifer, cleansing and blessing. That's positive. It comes from the root word parar, that means to break up, to violate, to break, to cast off, to cause to cease, to clean, to defeat, disannul, disappoint, dissolve, divide, make of none effect, fail, frustrate, bring to naught, make void, all negative. So we see that the opposites. The word itself is positive. We know the red heifer is for cleansing, purification, that will lead to blessing. But the root word that sits behind it is a curse. So that gives us the two poles or the opposites that is connected to Yahweh's commandments as well. If you do his commandments, you'll be blessed. If you don't do it, what's behind it are curses, and to be separated, annulled, and violated, and all that. So And what we learned from this is violating or breaking the covenant, you bring a curse upon yourself. That's the hidden message. So the message behind the 7 cows, the fat cows, the skinny cows, I think the fat cows contained the curse because that's the abundance of Egypt. The skinny cows, to do with the heifer, the cleansing, emptying yourself, humbling yourself. That's to do with cleansing the heifer and purification, which is associated with the preparation, which this feast is all about. So we see the 2 opposites and they both fit the same pattern. So we also know the previous Torah portion, we look at Mount Gerizim blessing and Mount Ebal the curse. We see the same symbolism here with the cows. Famine is the word ra'af. That comes from the root word ra'ef. That means to be hungry and to suffer. It's the same as to be thirsty and to be parched. So we see the same famine that's in Egypt. It's like a double whammy kind of thing. One has to do with thirst, the other one has to do with food. So spiritually, you're suffering and dying, and you will die from hunger and thirst. Now, where this word ra'ef is found is in Isaiah 8, verse 21 to 22, where he says, and they shall pass through it, hardly be stead and hungry, and it shall come to pass that when they shall be hungry, they shall worry themselves and curse the king and their God and look upward, and they shall look unto the earth and behold trouble and darkness, dimness of anguish, and they shall be driven to darkness. So Isaiah 8 give us the context of to be hungry, and when people go through the process of going through a troubled time, they will curse Yahweh. Now, the other place where the phrase cursing Yahweh is found is in Revelation 16, verse 9 and Revelation 16, verse 11. The first account is during the 4th bowl that's poured out by the angel, and that was after they were scorched by the sun and heat and fire. Second place is where the 5th angel poured out his bowl, where the plague of sores came upon man. And both instances, they cursed Yahweh as well, which links up with the trouble and darkness, dimness of anguish, and they will be driven to darkness. So even though the plagues or the bowls that were poured upon, which is the root word of the word para, it's the opposite side of the commandments. So those who rebel against Yahweh, they will activate the curse to come upon them. And when they experience the curse, they won't repent, but they will reflect the curse back and curse Yahweh instead. So that just shows us what we are up against. People won't necessarily repent. They will probably turn worse than they are now. So they won't be passive and tolerate our faith in who we are. They will be more aggressive because of the intensity of the anguish and the curses that will come upon them. So all the language used here from famine and cow and the south all relates to the time of trouble, or the tribulation, the great tribulation, or Jacob's trouble. And that's the connection with last week's Torah portion as well as with the Torah portions that started with Joseph and the storyline of Joseph and the 2 7-year periods.
Interesting, because Paro, which is the Hebrew for Pharaoh, is very similar, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's cow, yeah.
I was just
No,
thinking
he's a
about
cow.
that, because, yeah, but they worship the cow.
Cow anyway.
And
yeah.
they made the golden calf.
The golden
and the-
calf.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like there's that connection to
Yeah.
Egypt wanting to go back.
That's right.
Yeah, so that's
Pharaoh is the epitome of that curse, isn't it?
Don't you also think a lot of the cursing is going to come because, man is a stupid thing. You can tell a man 1,000 times to do something and he won't do it. But they will curse God simply because they knew the scriptures. They didn't follow in the scriptures, so it's like a double whammy. He knows he's done wrong, but he's got to blame somebody else.
Yeah.
True.
And oh, you're a righteous God, you won't destroy the wicked. because you're a loving God. But they don't realize there's two sides to that God. He's a just God, he's a righteous God, and what's that, discipline on people. And that's why I think a lot of them will call on the rocks and the mountains and that to hide them from the wrath of God, because they will know that they've stepped out of line.
Yeah.
There's no two ways about it too.
Yeah, and I think Yahweh will reveal himself just like the elephant dove. Within the time of distress, he will be closer than you think. I think even the evil people will experience him and realize that he's him behind it. And that's why they will curse him. Yeah, so there's a lot of gems hidden within the Torah portions and the storyline and the link between Daniel, Matthew, and the book of the Maccabees. Now, the most interesting thing is if you read the context of Isaiah 8, it's a very funny piece. I think I've discussed this previously as well, but this is basically just the context of that previous verse. And it talks about the riches of Damascus and the spoil of Samaria that will be returned from the king of Assyria. Now, Assyria comes from the word Ashur, that means success, to be happy, to make straight, and to make right. And that's similar to the word Yisrael, it means straight ones of Elohim. So it seems like in amongst all this cursing and things that are happening, and the darkness and anguish, there's happiness. People will be made straight. So you get the other people on the other side that will repent and become part of the straight ones of Elohim, which is part of Israel, as a result of this time of distress that will become upon man. And that's the time of Jacob's trouble. That's also the Great Tribulation. And the purpose of the tribulation is to shake everybody in the world. Some will respond, humble themselves, repent. The others will curse God. And the sheep and the goats will be separated. There won't be any fence, people on the fence. They'll go either this way or that way. And we'll also read about that in Revelation, I think, 21. So in saying that, the time of the Great Tribulation is the time of Yahweh's grace that's extended to the nations. That's the time where the harvest will come in, the nations will come in, and they will eventually stand before the throne. You won't be able to count them. That's how many people will come to faith. If you think of a snapshot now, I think we're 8 or 9 billion people. I don't know how much we are now. How many? So if Yahweh comes now, out of 9 billion people, there will be a lot of people who come to faith. But there will be a lot of people who curse Yahweh as well. Don't know the ratio, but if you read Revelation, there will be a great harvest. And the result, it's because of the Great Tribulation. So the Great Tribulation is the grace Yahweh extending to the nations, to shake them so their eyes can open, so they can come in.
Philip, but also, if you read some of the prophecies, it says, Egypt is my beloved, and part of Syria, a huge part of Syria, which is going to be involved in the New Jerusalem area, or the promised portion, will come to know Yahweh in a big way, because it actually says, Egypt, my beloved. So he's, out of this thing, there's going to be multitudes of people that are going to be drawn in from both quarters, from that quarter and from the bottom quarter, who will actually be part of Israel.
And it's also symbolic of, because Egypt and the storyline of leaving Egypt and going to the promised land is the sinful bondage. And you will be released from that and then start to follow Yahweh and then enter the promised land. So the people who are in bondage in Egypt will eventually become the beloved as they are released from the bondage of Pharaoh, the cow. Paro. All right, so what's interesting about this is there's in Isaiah 8, it talks about a newborn son, and the newborn son's name is Maher Shalal Chazbaz. That's a beautiful name for a little boy, isn't it? Especially if you want to call him for dinner. So immediately when I saw that, I said, no, there's something in there. Now, his name means hasting is he to the booty, swift to the prey. So it's just like Abram running, to do the commandments. It sounds like you being hasty, and it's to do with prey or booty. It's to do with a reward. When you're in war, there's normally a booty. The nation that wins, they gain booty from the ones that lost, and that's basically also referring to the harvest. Now, when we analyze each one of these words, it tells us a little story. So maher means to be hasty in anxiousness. So it's a negative hastiness. It's like running away from something that might hurt you or threaten you. And that word is first found in Genesis 18:6, where Abraham was hasty for Sarah to prepare cakes for the 3 men visiting him prior to the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. So we see the anxiousness is the context of judgment that's coming. And he's hasty to prepare for prior to that event coming, and to spend time with these men. And that's where he interceded for Sodom and Gomorrah as well. So this is like a pre-warning, the end is near. That's where we are in the time frame. We're currently in the time frame of Maher. Now, shalal means spoil, booty, and prey. It comes from the root word that means to take, prey, and to fall, and purpose. It's first used in Ruth 2 verse 16, where Boaz told his men to allow Ruth to glean even amongst the sheaves so that she can pick up more and gather more. So this is the prophetic picture of the gathering of the harvest. And Ruth represents the bride of Boaz, and Boaz is kinsman redeemer. Which is a picture of Yeshua, and Ruth is the picture of the bride of Messiah. And the bride of Messiah will be present during the time of the harvest, and she will be allowed to pick up more, and the harvest will be very great in her hand. So that's why we will do a great work during that time of distress. So first we get the warning, and then we get the message that we are going to the people who's going to do the work of the harvest during the time of the harvest, which is a great tribulation. And what I've got here is I've got a letter shin there, and the shin means fire. It's also something that's burning, or it's uncomfortable for us. That's also the time of Jacob's trouble, something that's uncomfortable. But what we see there is 2 lamets. Now, lamet means teaching. It also means learning. So Ruth will be the one in amongst all the heat of the moment, be the ones teaching, and there will be a lot of people learning. And that's how the harvest will come in. That's why we study the word. When we're in the midst of that, we know the prophecies, we can point them to what's happening and then show them it's already written. And then people will come in as they see the events happening. That's pre-prophesied in scripture. Next one is hash, chet-shin, that means to haste, to hurry, to make quickly, to enjoy, to be excited, to be eager with excitement for enjoyment. It's like waiting for your birthday. It's not the one that makes you anxious. This one is making you excited because something great's going to happen. This word is first found in Numbers 32:17, where they were ready to cross the Jordan to face their enemies in battle prior to the possession of the promised land. So this is the excitement that they have prior to the final battle. And that's a message to us as well. We know there's a battle going to happen, and our natural reaction is, we fear. We need to be excited. Now, we watch a Avlon Hanova rabbi, and he said, the time that we are in now, we should rejoice because Mashiach is near. We shouldn't fear. And this is basically what this word underlines here as well. Now, what we see from the letters, we get the same shin, which is the time of heat and distress. But we have the chet there, which is entering life, the letter chet, which is associated with the promised land, or chai olam, or eternal life. The last word is buzz, not buzz like here. It means to spoil, to plunder, prey, and to seize. It's first found scripture in Genesis 34:7, where the sons of Jacob went among the dead bodies after the battle and they took their spoil. This is after the smoke cleared. There's a inheritance or spoil that they received. Now what we see there is the bed, that's the house. So it's entering the house, which is after the last battle, entering the promised land. And then the Zion means sword. It's associated with the battle. It's also associated with the word of Yahweh. So we see the same symbolism there, aligning perfectly. So it's like a little timeline. So we are currently here. The next thing we need to know, we need to prepare to be like Ruth, to be ready for the harvest and to do the work. And how do we prepare? We study his word so we can know and teach others. And then there's going to be a battle, but we'll be ready. And we are excited to meet Mashiach after the battle. And then there will be spoils afterwards and we'll enter the house. So that's a beautiful storyline of the end times timeline found there. So this is what I wanted to come to. South versus North, or the king of the South, king of the North, but from a spiritual perspective. Now, South is Negeb, that means South country in Egypt, comes from the root word that means parched or thirsty. So South is associated with thirst, and it relates to desire and needs that are not met. North is the word Tzapon, that means north, northward, and northern comes from the root word Tzapon, that means to hide, treasure, and treasure or storing up. North is associated with hidden things and treasures of Yahweh or his abundance. So now you can see the solution to the problem that exists within South is found within the North. The desires and the thirst that you have for things that you need are the treasures that are found within the North, that are where Yahweh is. So we see the separation of the North and the South created lack and abundance, but the abundance is hidden. The lack is visible. We are entrapped in the world of the lack, which is the fallen physical world. Because of sin, we broke the connection. Everything that has to do with meeting my needs is hidden from me. It can only be accessed through meeting Yahweh, his word, and then get that lack or that thirst met, hunger and thirst met. Now, the mechanisms for reconnecting the two, because of the brokenness, as you see there in the illustration, before sin came, they overlapped. The physical and the spiritual realm overlapped, and it formed the place of the garden where Yahweh connected with man. And when man sinned, the connection was broken and the garden was removed, and then the north became hidden from the south. And then Yahweh decided, I'm going to send someone as a mediator and also to restore the work. So he sent the Mashiach, which is the king of the north, the real king of the north, down to the south, but he became hidden king of the south as well, to do the work of Messiah. Now, being amongst us during his first coming, nobody recognized him, just like Joseph. He was hidden, but he actually came from the north. But his attributes that he had was like Pharaoh's. He was a ruler in Egypt. In the same way, when Yeshua came, his brothers didn't recognize him. His identity was hidden because he came from the north. And he came to the south to do the restoration work. But in the same token, because he came in the place of the king of the south, which is Hasatan or Lucifer, Lucifer returned the favor and he dressed himself up as a counterfeit king of the north to deceive people, thinking, and people will think he is the Messiah, but he's the anti-Messiah, the one in the place of. So we get the exchange of the one that comes from the north, he hid himself in the south. The one that's really king of the south hid himself in as a king of the north to deceive. And you get the counterbalance. Now what happened was when Yahweh created everything, he gave dominion over the physical, which is the south country, to man. When man sinned, they lost the authority, and the authority moved to the Nachash, or the opposer, or Satan or Lucifer. So he is the ruler of the south country currently. And when Yeshua came the first time, he defeated him and took his power away, but the kingdom is still under his control, and he's using his followers' power to hold everything intact. That's why the symbolism of the stone that will come will destroy the final parts of his foundation, which is cracked anyway, to destroy his kingdom, and then the north and the south will reunite. And the new Jerusalem will come down, so the two will connect again. And that garden space is symbolically the new Jerusalem, where heaven and earth will reconnect again, where Yahweh will bring everything back into Echad. And in saying that, the lack that currently exists in the south, where we are in the broken physical world, will be filled and satisfied with the abundance and the treasures that are hidden from us, but will be revealed, and we'll have access to that. And we will balance back out in the beginning. So in this context, Yahweh is the true king of the north. Adam was the true king of the south. Then he lost his authority, and Lucifer, or the Satan, or the Nachash, became the king of the south. He's still the king of the south. And then Yeshua came as a hidden king of the south and took the authority away. Now, during his second coming, he will destroy the final kingdom, and then all the authority of the whole kingdom will be back in the hand of Mashiach. So that's the spirits that sit behind the king of the north, king of the south. Now, to support that is when you look at the word dominion. Dominion is the word memsal. Now, what's evident there, if you just look at the letters, there's mem, lamed, and shin. Shin, in our context, means heat and discomfort and time of trouble. But we have two mems and we have a lamed. We know lamed means teacher, learning, but it's also a shepherd's staff. And the mem represent the word. Two mems, if you look at the symbolism of the Ten Commandments, they can also represent two tablets, or the Torah, or the covenant. So what we see with dominion, it says in this verse, when we go back, this is now Yeshua depicted as Joseph. It says, the king of the south shall become strong, as well as one of his princes, and he shall gain power over him and have dominion. His dominion shall be a great dominion. Now, this dominion is the dominion of the hidden Messiah that's not currently recognized by everybody, which is Yeshua. And to confirm that is where this word memsal, the root word masal, is found is in Genesis 1 verse 18, which talk about the sun has dominion over the day or the light. The sun is the origin of light, Yahweh is light. So that's Mashiach. He has dominion over the light, which is the word or the truth, because he is the truth. Genesis 3:16, the husband has rule over his wife, and the husband depicted here is the Messiah becoming flesh, his word, and his rule over his wife, which is the bride. Genesis 4:7, Cain, man, ruled over sin or desire. That's where it says that desire is at your door. If you overcome, you will be blessed. So it's a warning and also a means of overcoming. And if you overcome, there will be a blessing. And that Genesis 4 verse 7 is a message to us that we need to overcome sin. How do we overcome it? We've got the word, we've got the covenant, and we've got the shepherd to follow. Now, the next one is Genesis 4:24 verse 2. Abimelech ruled over the household, the whole household. And Abimelech represents the spirit, which is also the letter Shin, which is the symbolism of Ruach HaKodesh, and the household depicted by the body of Messiah. So that's another symbolism of how to overcome is through the word and spirit. And the last one is in Genesis 37 verse 8, where Joseph ruled over his father's household. And this is the shepherd, the Lamech, that represent the shepherd's staff and the rulership over the household of Yahweh. And Joseph represents Messiah. So from all these verses, we see that the king of the south, whose dominion became very great, is when Yeshua came down the first time and the second time, hidden as the king of the north, manifesting as the king of the south, and he's taking dominion back. So whatever the original king of the south, which is Lucifer, stole, he took back. And he has dominion. So this is what will be at the end. Everything will be echad, where the north and the south will connect. Yeshua will be the king of kings, or the king of the north, and the bride, who was intended to be the ruler over the physical, which was Adam, he gave it to Lucifer, is now going to be given back to the bride, and she will rule over the physical. And that's what we read in Revelation, where the New Jerusalem come down as a bride adorned. And then we read about there will be people outside, and the people inside will basically rule over the people outside. That's also in Zechariah 14. And that's also confirmed where it says that we will rule over nations in the end. And that's confirming what we see here. So the whole restoration process will be the reuniting of the north and the south. Symbolically, the spiritual realm and the physical realm will meet again, and the concept of the Garden of Eden will be reestablished, and it's also known as the New Jerusalem. And that's where the bride and the groom and the household of Yahweh will live. So looking at the dominion over the king of the south, we read about the famine and the 7 years, and also the numbers that were used, 1,260 days. We have 42 months. We've got time and half a time. All of them relates to the time frame of 3.5 years, if you interpret it in that context. So what we read there is also in confirmed in Daniel 12 as well as Matthew 24, and it's all relating to the time of the abomination of desolation that's set up, and then the image that will also be, and the sacrifice that will stop, and the image that will be set up. Now, the numbers that were used there is 1,290 days and 1,260 days. The one is when you see the two witnesses, and the other one is the time of the two witnesses prophesying. And it's also the time of the reign of the anti-Messiah. So these two numbers, I wanted to find out what they mean. So I looked at the gematria of 1,290. There's not a gematria for 1,260, only for the 1290. And that's the word teraphim, which means idolatry, idols, image, and a family idol. This word is used in Genesis 31:19, where Rachel stole the teraphim, the idols of her father Lavan, which is the full and the empty one. And that translated the curse that came upon her, and eventually she died. So we see that this number is associated with idolatry and idol worship. And that's something that we find in the household of Yahweh as well today. And that activated the curse, just like the evil that cried out from Sodom and Gomorrah got Yahweh's attention and it came down, and that resulted in judgment. In the same way, all the idol worship that we do through what we do within the household. If you think about this, is in context of Jacob and his wife. That's the household of Yahweh. That's the future Yisrael. Now we have the current Yisrael, which is effectively the body of Messiah, which are all the 40,000 different Christian denominations inclusive. And there's a lot of family idols hidden within the current body of Messiah. And that activates judgment. Now that judgment, that curse, is the Great Tribulation. That's part of that curse that will come down. And that's what that number is about and the connection to that. Now, if you want to interpret that, I've just calculated slightly different. I looked at 1,290 days and see how many years it is within the decimal. So it's 3.534247 years. And if you take the decimal, which is 0.53247, and you look up how many days that is, it's 195 days. So you can say 1,290 days is 3 years and 195 days. Now, the reason I want to count it like that is because when it kicks off at a Passover, because we don't follow the right calendar, so we might be off a little bit. If you just count days, you might not do it accurately. It's better to count the Passovers. So if you see the image and the sacrifices start and stopping, you count 3 Passovers. And after the third Passover, you count 195 days. And if you do that, I'll just use an example. If we do that this year, that time period will take you to after Sukkot, which is the time frame of entering into the kingdom, if you look at it prophetically. If you do the same with 1,260 days, it's 3.452055, which equates to 3 Passovers and 165 days. And if you test that on this year, it takes you to the feast of Yom Teruah, which is the Feast of Trumpets within that time frame. So that confirms that it starts with the Passover and will end with the trumpets. That's 1,260 days. 1,209 days is 30 days later, which is after, which is basically the next phase after the smoke clears, which is the entering and taking spoil that we read about. So this is a prophetic picture of Messiah coming back to take his bride without notice. And what we also see here through the storyline of Rachel and the family idols, that Yahweh still came to get her, even though she's not perfect as a whole. So our purpose is to help to cleanse the bride and to help our fellow believers in Mashiach, in Messiah, to come to that realization as well. So just interestingly, if you look at the Gematria of 1,260 days, which is the 165-day component, you get 3 different sets of words. The blue relates to Yahweh and Yeshua being revealed. The green relates to Yahweh's people. And the red relates to the judgment, or the negative connotation to the words. So the blue is the light of Yahweh, splendor, brightness, and shining, and the brightness of his coming. It's to do with the second coming. Yahweh rises, it's being elevated, and loveliness. So those are all attributes that relate to after the second coming. The green are the counsel, advice, and purpose, plowing the ground, the place for task, and to answer and to response. So that has to do with Ruth teaching and the other people learning, preparing the ground to bring people in. And there's counsel and advice and purpose that need to be revealed to those people. And it's a place for tasks. It's just a place where we will actually do work. It's not about just sitting and waiting for the rapture. And then the negative connotations is pronouncement of judgment, curse, gloomy, darkness, trees and wood. We know the fire will burn 1/3 of the trees. To shut, and weeping and lamentation. So it's all negative connotations. Same with the number 195. There's no green numbers, just blue, which is my delight is in her. That's Yahweh's delight in his people. And then cattle, livestock, that's part of the spoil. It's also symbolic of the nations. To purchase, that's through the blood of Messiah, the inheritance that will come in, and to blossom and to flower, that's the beauty that's associated with the bride preparing herself. And then the negative is to bend, to trader, vengeance, laziness, sluggardness, mocking, end, extremity, and to be cut off. So we see the same theme through those words, and they all relate to the time frame of the Great Tribulation. All right, so this is just a quick rundown on how do we interpret prophecy. I'm just gonna maybe pause and then we can just take a quick break.
This is exactly what it's done. Okay, I understand that the English word for it, the meaning in the English narrative is Yeshua. And there's a lot of power in that name. But actually what they are saying is they're quoting idol. There's an idol symbolism behind that quotation.
Because at least
So the name Jesus,
they would use the Greek equivalent of, say, God saves or salvation, sozo or something. So you think at least if you're going to change Yeshua, you call him sozo. So it's a bit like a clown, but
it makes you question. And like I say, I'm grateful that we all came to faith in a Christian church because that brought us here. But it makes you question the whole religion of Christianity. Interestingly enough, I actually watched a documentary on ancient Greek this past week. You can actually see
similarities from the Greek culture going into
and obviously
influencing Christianity.
Catholicism. And that's just a great mix of those two. It's got nothing to do with the word.
Well, that's what Constantine did. He mixed the two to create a new one.
Yes.
But just back to the name Jesus. Is the name Jesus evil? Is it bad? Should we not say it? Some believe it's the name of an idol, as you just said. So is it bad or doesn't matter?
Well, I might use it in context with Torah.
Well, I wouldn't say it's bad because if it wasn't for that name, I wouldn't be here.
Yeah, that's what I would use.
So I just want to take you back to the north and south. The one from the north hid himself. Joseph hid himself from his brothers. Joseph didn't have the name Joseph. He had an Egyptian name that's probably linked to a pagan idol.
Exactly.
So in the same way, Joseph was hidden with a name that's connected to the culture of brokenness and bondage. Yeshua or Jesus is a name of the King of the North hiding as within the South fallen world in order to save it and to restore it. So in the same way, Joseph's Egyptian name is not evil in itself. It still identify him. In the same way, Jesus still identify him, but it identify him as the hidden one, not the revealed one. His name as the revealed one is Yeshua. His name of the hidden one is Jesus. So when you think about Jesus, Greek culture, all that, you dress him up totally different. He's not connected to the Torah, to the festivals whatsoever. But when you reveal him as the King of the North, you reveal him as Yeshua, the one who is the Torah. So it's one and the same, but it's seen from different audiences. And the hidden things will be the revealed things. So those people will get the revelation. So Jesus in itself is not bad or wrong. It still connects to our Messiah and the work he's done. It reveals to him during the phase of restoration and redemption. But when we refer to him as the King, he's King Yeshua. He's not King Jesus. Because Jesus was the Redeemer.
And he's coming back as King Yeshua.
Yeah, that's right. Because that's his revealed nature. Joseph was revealed as Joseph.
Not Pharaoh.
After redemption. Not his Egyptian name. Yeah, so eventually people will know him as Yeshua, their King. They know him now as Jesus, their Redeemer.
Realize it.
Yeah.
One family, all of them.
Mum and I this week watched, have you
because you both philosophy Jews daily, we've been watching a lot of his teachings this tremendous past few weeks. We've watched his one called Identity Crisis.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
we got the DVD if anybody wants to
That's
borrow.
Fantastic. I don't know if you guys
Yeah, we
have
did.
seen that one. Yeah, but it's just that deception that Satan has stolen the identity of Yah's people. And that hidden thing, they don't know who they are, but it will be revealed, you know, and God uses it for a purpose to amazingly bring everything together.
Yeah, from Jacob's perspective, Yeshua's name was Esau and the 400 men. He didn't know him as anything else, but he was the Aleph Taf hidden in that, and he was revealed to him after that wrestling. So there will be a wrestling happening, a lot of believers, and then they will change their walk, and they will get the true revelation of who Yeshua is and who Yahweh is.
And I don't think it's going to be very long from now. Really, I honestly believe in my heart that there's going to be an awakening. Soon there's going to be a huge awakening. The Holy Spirit is going to do something somewhere down the line, and people are going to suddenly, the lights are going to be turned on. Ding, and they're going to know. Because I believe that the Spirit will definitely be that acute or wake people up spiritually. Those that are spiritually dead will remain spiritually dead. But those that are seeking,
They will find.
they were going to find something, and it's going to be such a revelation.
Well, we found it. We were there.
But I think there's a early rain
And the latter rain.
and the latter rain. And the early rain there will be few, but the latter rain there will be many. So that awakening you talk about now, I don't think that's a multitude. People talk about, revelation, what do you call it? Revival. Revival will happen during the tribulation. The awakening will happen prior to. There will only be a few that will be awakened, but there will be a lot that will be in the revival. But that will happen during the time of the harvest, I believe. Because people are bound in churches today.
Yeah, won't it be then like a restoration for them now? To restore them, to realize.
Well, if they're happy with singing their songs in their black buildings, nobody's looking for the truth. They won't find it. You need to humble yourself and empty yourself from your doctrines and read the word for what it is to get the revelation. He won't impose it on you supernaturally by spirit. Not going to happen. You need to take the first step, and then he will take the step. He said, draw near to me and I will draw near to you. He didn't say, I will impose myself on you and I hope you'll draw near to me. It's the other way around. He's not imposing himself on us whatsoever. We need to take the first step. He will take a step towards you as well.
Philip, I was actually astounded. A guy gave statistics of Christian apostolic churches in America that don't even believe in the virgin birth, and they don't even believe in the Messiah anymore. I was shocked.
So what is
Yeah.
that to
Having a
add?
form of godliness, but denying the power.
Yeah, they don't believe that Yahweh can do something supernatural. And they want to have physical evidence. Even the 10 plagues need to be, scientifically proven. Otherwise, they don't believe it. It's not necessarily it's going to happen like that. Yes, it might be, but you don't have to. So don't try and fit everything into your little paradigm. He's bigger than that.
I was listening to someone the other day, and it was a pastor in America talking about how these mega churches, and they're so focused on being relevant and being not offending and just saying same kind of thing, looking at the statistics of people searching and hungry and coming looking for something different, and then they get in there and they're like, well, this is no different to what I get out there, and actually out there does this better. So what? And they don't stay and just and saying is that like young Christians that have been brought up in it, and then they get to a certain age and think, well, you know, there's no there's nothing here that makes us different to out there. So what are we, you know, and just saying it's enough. We need to stop trying to please the world, stop trying to be like the world, and be set apart, be different. Because those who are seeking will come, and they're seeking that. They're not seeking out there.
Yeah, we don't seek worldliness.
Yeah.
They seek the truth. You must offer them truth, not a nightclub.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they quench their thirst with lemonade and soft drink instead, and they think they're not thirsty anymore.
Yes.
Yeah, nice music. Yeah.
Disco.
Yeah.
All right. So next slide is about how do you interpret prophecy. Now, I've made the statement before. If I go to the person who knows the most, and there's some of his words recorded somewhere in scripture, I will rate that as the highest authority. And who is that person? It's Yeshua. Because Daniel said a lot of things. He's a great prophet. We read about Isaiah and all that. They're great prophets. But the greatest one of them all is Yeshua. And guess what? His disciples asked him, when will the time of the end be? And then he gave them a rundown of events, which is a time frame. And if you look at that, and you overlay Revelation, and you overlay Daniel, and you overlay all the things over Matthew 24, you'll get the right time frame. If you read Revelation for what it is, it's jumping to and fro. It's got a lot of symbolism. And people, I know some people say it's easy. No, it's not. You don't really study it if you think it's easy. You need to understand the symbolism, and the time sequences are but all over the place. But if you look at the symbolism and the things that's happening, and you find the framework and the connections to Matthew 24, you can actually get the sequence of events that you can slot Revelation into. You can slot Daniel into that, and that will give us the accurate time frame. And it gives us the time frame prior to the starting of everything. You call it the birth pains. And then he talks about the Great Tribulation. And then there's the appearance of the Son of Man in that sequence. And if you read Matthew 24, there's no confusion about when is he coming. Before, after, during, we don't know. Nobody knows the time or hour. No, just read Matthew 24. Believe it comes from the highest authority. And he wasn't drunk when he talked to his disciples. He didn't jump around and try to confuse us. He talked straight to them. There was no parables, nothing involved. Now, if we go back to the earliest prophetic time frame, it's the dream that Joseph interpreted with the 7 and 7. So that gives us 2 7-year periods, 7 prosperity, 7 of famine. Now, just there, people say tribulation, great tribulation, 7 years. Oh, really? If you read Matthew 24, it talks about 2 processes, and it connects it to the birth process of a woman in labor, birthing a child. You get the birth pains, and then you get the birth. The birth pains precedes the birth. The birth is the Great Tribulation. The birth pains is the time of sorrows, because that's the time we get all the contractions. And the contraction feels like the big one, but it's a small version of it. In the same way, we get prophetic fulfillments, that's just the pain, and then people set dates on it. And then they get disappointed because they don't really realize there's contractions. They look the same. They fit the prophecies 100%, but it's not the birth. So don't count dates. Don't set dates, because you might just get the contractions and you miss the point. So there's specific things that he said we should look out for when the water is going to break, when the birth will start. And we need to look at that. And he points back to Daniel, and that's the link to Hanukkah that we looked at. And those 2 witnesses, when you see the sacrifices stopped, the image set up, that's the birth starting. Prior to that, wars, rumors of wars, all that, that's a time of sorrows. That's the contractions. It's not the birth. Now, I can, from my perspective, I think we are very close to, or we are already in it, of the time of sorrows, the contractions. What we see around us, it fits. It might be a very small contraction. It might be in the initial stages. It might not be the 3.5 years of contractions. It might be preceding that. So I don't want to set dates. We look at prophecy. We look at seasons to confirm. But we need to know when we see these things, we need to prepare. That's what you do during the time of sorrows. You don't set dates and polish your shoes ready for the rapture. It's not about that. It's about preparing yourself with the word, because you're going to be the Ruth that's going to be part of the harvest that will help other people. You need to be equipped in order to do that. And that's what we need to do. So the 2 7-year periods, prosperity, a lot of physical prosperity is happening. And then you have the 7 years, which is 2 parts, contractions, birth, 3.5, 3.5. And that we find repeatedly, Revelation as well as in Daniel. And also in Matthew.
I think we were in the 7 years of prosperity already. We've been there.
Yeah, we've seen that.
The world has done fantastic.
Yeah, we're all of us kings. Most
Yeah,
people.
we do. Most
We've
of
got
us
everything.
are kings.
Yeah, car, house, everything you want. You've got it. Everybody's got it.
Today,
Most people have.
plus snacks. Yeah.
But you know, Philip, it's hard to grasp what people are, what they're thinking. If I say to you, tomorrow I will see you at Domino's, you can go and wait for me at Domino's tomorrow and you will see me. Jesus made a specific statement. He said, when you see these things happen, then shall the coming of the Son of Man be. Not halfway down the line. He said, when these things have happened, and I can't understand why the church can't see that.
Because they don't want to see that.
They don't want to see it. They want to have a post, mid, and, well, they believe we cuckoo because we're waiting for the end. But it's,
Yeah. True. Yeah, so this is just an outline fitting, overlaying all of them. So the river Jordan, crossing the Jordan from the timeline of leaving Egypt, entering Promised Land, that's the Great Tribulation. That aligns with the birth or the Great Tribulation as stated in Matthew 24. And prior to that is the time of sorrows, the beginning of sorrows. That's when they travel through the wilderness, heading up to the Jordan. And after the Jordan happened, then you enter the Promised Land. So that's basically the time frame. Now, Matthew 24, when you look at the overall time frame, it says in verse 4 to 14, and Yeshua answered them, be careful, let no one or let anyone deceive you. So you start with a warning, but we probably, that was fulfilled, so we're going to, take that out. We don't listen to his warnings. He said, many will come using my name, and they will say, I am the Messiah. I don't know if you've done some research on how many false messiahs already proclaim themselves as the Messiah, not only in Christianity, but also in other faiths. The New Age is looking for the cosmic Christ. The Krishna's got a Christ. Everybody's got a Christ or a Mahadi or some sort of a Messiah.
The Jews have they've got messiahs.
They've got messiahs in every generation, let alone the real Messiah. So there's a lot of false messiahs and say I'm the Messiah, or people label them as Messiah. So we've seen that. We can tick that one off. And they will deceive many people. And then you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. That rumors is also connected to covert wars or undercover wars. Things like the Cold War is like a rumor of a war. You think it's a war. Is it a war? I don't know if it's a war. Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. But there's definitely a spiritual war happening. We don't maybe not see it physically. But in the Middle East, there's definitely wars, specifically around Israel. And then he said, nation will stand up against nation, kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines, earthquakes in various places. And all of these are only the beginning of the pains of the end. So those are the birth pains. And I believe we're very close to it already in it. But we can't confirm it until we see the main witnesses. Now, the link to Daniel is where Yeshua said in verse 15, the prophet Daniel said that the disgusting thing that will cause destruction, that's basically abomination of desolation, will stand in the holy place. When you see this, let the reader take note. Those of you in Judea should flee to the mountains. Those who are on the roof should not come down, get anything out of their houses. Those who are in the field should not turn back to get their coats. How horrible it will be for women who are pregnant, nursing babies in those days, and pray that it won't be in winter or on the Sabbath, a holy day when you flee. There will be a great tribulation at that time, a kind of tribulation that has not happened from the beginning of the world until now and will certainly never happen again. Now, this is the pinnacle of all tribulations. So the Holocaust is nothing in comparison to this. So whatever we saw in the past in persecuting people and distress and wars, this will outweigh that. So we haven't seen it yet. So we think back, if people think that it's already the tribulation, there's some people who believe that we're in the Great Tribulation. What we have now is still a vacation.
Hey, Philip, I tell you what, when the vials and those woes are poured out, mate, that's going to be tribulation.
Yeah.
When that, what's an asteroid hits this earth, and these guys are running for their lives, and there's no water, and there's no, the water's poisoned, that's tribulation, mate.
Yeah, and then the supernatural signs and wonders will be with the things coming out of the abyss and persecute
That's right,
people.
tormenting the demons.
Yeah.
I tell you, that's going to be tribulation.
We haven't seen that except in movies,
yeah.
man. Not even. Yeah, so, and then he says that people say, there's the Messiah, here's the Messiah, don't believe them, because it hasn't happened yet. And then he said, the Son of Man will come again just as lightning flashes from the east to the west. Vulgars will gather wherever there is a dead body. So that means that at the time when the Son of Man comes, there will be many dead bodies. That means there would have been a lot of action already. It's not going to happen prior to the tribulation, because prior to tribulation, there's no vulgars, there's no dead bodies. It's only after. And then, of course, the verse that confirms this is verse 29. Immediately after the misery of those days, or immediately after the tribulation, the sun will turn dark, the moon will not give its light, the stars will fall from the sky, and the powers of the universe will be shaken. Then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in the sky, which is the previous verse. All the people on the earth will cry in among when they see the Son of Man coming in the clouds, in the sky with power and great glory. And he will sound out his angels with a loud trumpet call, and from every direction under the sky, they will gather those whom Yahweh has chosen. So that gather is another word for rapture. So when is the rapture? Immediately after the Great Tribulation. And there's dead bodies and all this, and all those terrible things happen. So this is the time sequence that people miss, and it doesn't fit their doctrine. So they spiritualize it. I don't know how they get around this, or they say, no, it's only for the Jews. It's not for us because he spoke to them in Judea. It's not for us. So it's all about just pushing it away because I've got my ticket for the rapture bus. Ain't going to happen.
The big story is the church is not mentioned after the what's of the seven churches.
Revelation 3 or 4 or something.
Then it's not mentioned again until Revelation 17 or 19. I mean, come on. Come on.
It is mentioned. It's called the whore of Babylon, the mother of harlots. That's the church, unfortunately.
That's why people are going to do spiritual leaders. They're going to go against these spiritual leaders and say, you guys,
You lied to
told
us.
us lies.
Yeah.
You see that you said rapture or garnering of the bride.
Well, it's gathering. All right. So this is news clippings from 1843 and after. That's from friend Miller. He was the one who actually came up with this doctrine of 1844. And they believed that the rapture, as you can see in the bottom right, will be happening in 1843, 1844. And then in 1844, when nothing happened, they labeled this whole event as the Great Disappointment. And then unfortunately, our SDA brothers came afterwards, used exactly the same methodology, repackaged it, and started a church called the Seventh-day Adventist Church from Miller's doctrine. They weren't first.
Ellen White came
After Miller,
did she?
yes.
She took this up.
Yeah,
And
after.
he was just a so-called prophet. He wasn't a denomination.
No, he probably had a church and domination, but he was the one who came up with this
SDA came
after this, yes.
Why would you build something on something that's already proven false?
I don't know. Because they wanted to fit their date setting calculations. So now they believe he cleansed the century from 1844 until now. I don't know if the sanctuary is that dirty. They need to cleanse it for that long. Sanctuary. Because the sanctuary is the temple. Why is he cleaning it? If
And
he refers
that's-
to the sanctuary as people, that's on
what
earth.
It does not need cleaning.
we need cleaning.
Yeah.
And if they say, no, the cleansing is happening on the earth, it's not working. It's worse than it was since 1844. There were more God-fearing people back then than now. So that cleansing is not happening on the earth. So that prophecy doesn't fit at all. And if you want to squeeze it to fit, there's got to be another great disappointment. And that's when the Great Tribulation starts, then the second great disappointment will happen. A lot of people will stand there with their tickets. I bought this, I paid dearly for it. All my money I gave to the church and their prosperity doctrines they gave me and the rapture teachings and all that I want to subscribe to is not happening. And then a lot of people lose their faith. And other people will, and I think in that time there were riots and people feared for their lives to actually preach this because the people were angry because they've been lied to. And a lot of people backslid because of this. So that's the danger of date setting. You look at the Moedim, you look at the seasons, you look at the prophetic patterns, and you use Matthew 24 as the main framework, not date setting, trying to count Daniel's number from a certain date and time and ending up somewhere and then predict that's the coming Messiah. Ain't going to happen. You're going to miss it.
What's that number in the center there?
Oh, it's the 2,300 mornings and evenings. They said it's years, and they've got 54 something around here. But they did all their date calculations on this, and I think where they started from is from the first pope. They counted.
Oh, that's the wrong.
So now they've got a starting point that's linked to. They call it the abomination of desolation. Is the pope.
Oh.
And then they counted from the first pope, and they ended up in 1844. Unfortunately.
But don't the JWs also say that Yeshua came in 1917? I'm sure one of our family members at a JW said that, 1917, I think he came.
And then he gave up, or he went back. He didn't do anything. My great grandpa was still there, and that's it. No one was raptured.
Parents were born in 1907 and 1909.
Even in 1666, Leonardo da Vinci was a believer, and he had more documents on trying to decipher Revelation than he did in his other works that he's done. And he believed the Messiah will come in 1666. So there was a great disappointment there as well.
Is the abomination, I guess, back in Daniel, they sacrificed a pig. Will it be the same thing, or will it be something else symbolic, or?
Yeah, so
it will be symbolic.
Yeah, so the temple was destroyed and it was rededicated. And how they started that was with taking the sacrifices away. Now, the prophecies Daniel said that the sacrifices will be taken away and it happened in the time of the Maccabees, and it will happen in the future. And Yeshua actually said, when you see this happening, like Daniel said, then you flee. So he's basically pointing back to Daniel that already happened in the time of the Maccabees, that will happen in the future. That means that that prophecy already happened and will happen again.
But what she's asking is, will they do a big thing again?
No, they won't do a big thing again.
Maybe they will. We don't know.
No, they're going to stop the sacrifice. Those are the two things that Daniel mentioned.
Oh, okay.
The book of the Maccabees, there was a temple. They defiled it.
Oh, yeah.
The way they defiled it, they stopped the sacrifices and they put an image of Zeus
In
in the sanctuary. So what's going to
now there's
happen
not a temple.
now
Yeah.
is the Jews want to build a new temple. They already have a portable altar and they've trained up all the Levites. And every Passover, they try to sacrifice. I think that the last or the previous year, they sacrificed the Passover lamb, but not on the Temple Mount. They sacrificed it a bit away from it. I don't know how far away from it. But they are getting closer. So as soon as they get access to the Temple Mount, they will definitely do the Passover sacrifice on the Temple Mount with their altar. And then that sacrifice might initiate the daily sacrifices after that, and then that will be stopped.
That's when he sets up an image of himself.
That's where the anti-Messiah will come and set up an image.
Sets up an image of himself.
Yeah. And that will start the reign of the anti-Messiah for 1,260 days. That's also the time the two prophets will prophesy for 1,260 days.
Yeah.
And they will prophesy or speak curses down on the world. And those are the events recorded in Revelation, the words spoken by the two prophets. And when the world realizes that it's these guys prophesying, they will kill them.
You know what's so scary about those prophets? If anybody speaks against them, they will just fall dead, mate.
Yeah.
Sure.
All right, so this is the last slide.
Trust anybody that does fire.
This is just my attempt to interpret the time frame. So at the bottom, I've got the Maccabee time frame here. I've got the 3.5 years on top, but I want to emphasize the festivals. So the first sign, which relates to the two things that need to happen, the image and the sacrifices, will happen around the season of the Passover. And then 3.5 years later, there's the Feast of Trumpets. That's where the Messiah will come. And then Yom Kippur is to do with that, which is the time of the final bowls that will be poured out, or the judgments. And then the Feast of Sukkot is when the New Jerusalem will come down. So all the symbolism of the festivals are still at play. And then all the other bits and pieces from Revelation is slotted in there within the time frame of Matthew 24. And what's interesting is that on the one side of the tribulation, there's a war, there's a woman. The woman is the whore of Babylon. On the other end, there's a woman, which is the bride. On this side, there's a war called Armageddon. On that side is a war called Gog and Magog, which is in Zechariah 14, where the fire will come down and devour those who want to attack those inside the city. And the 1,000 years are the time frame in between the end of the tribulation and the coming down of the New Jerusalem. So there's the Sabbath rest, or the 1,000-year rest, which is the 7th millennium. So we are basically in the 6th millennium towards the end. And at the crossover between the 6th and the 7th millennia, that's where the Great Tribulation will be, where the River Jordan needs to be crossed. And then there's a time of peace for 1,000 years. And at the end of that time period, that's where Satan is bound, Satan is released. And then those who are still on the earth during that time will go up against Jerusalem, the righteous people inside Jerusalem. and they will attack them, and then the fire will come down. So that means during the 1,000 years there will be people. My SDA brothers reckon there will be no one. But if you read Zechariah 14, there's definitely people there. Deceive. Yeah.
Yeah, why would he need to be bound if there's no one?
Yeah, they said he's bound because there's no one to deceive.
Oh,
So it's not a literal binding, and
But if you release him, then
it's just
he said magically people then. Where did they come from then? Magically after 1,000 years.
You know, Philip,
So it doesn't make sense.
if you look at the world as it stands now, you've got Indonesia, you've got the Philippines. Most of those people, if you look at their worship, it's of some form of dragon come snake. Go to China, it's the red dragon. The red dragon in the sky, drawing a fourth of the nations with him, going against the woman, which is the church. I promise you, we're going to come under some wicked communistic onslaught towards the end of time. This beast dragon is going to go after the church, if you look at it that way. And it will be towards the end of, once this guy's got the church out the road, the enemy is going to definitely work through this dragon. Well, he is the dragon.
Yeah.
I believe communism is going to play an extreme
Socialism.
socialism is going to play a part in our trying to just destroy us.
And it's already evidence of that.
Yep.
The Pope said we don't gonna own anything. And I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The agenda.
And it's the big thing of calling good evil and evil good.
And the confusion.
Virtues and the morals and
We don't even know whether we're male or female anymore,
No, that's right.
let alone right from wrong.
And you won't own anything, and you will be happy.
Yeah, and today I
What
read,
does that word happy is?
I keep telling you that.
A share.
Yeah.
It'll be a share.
even I read a little article today on YouTube, on Facebook. They even, with that male and female, the gender thing, even if they hear, so obviously through TV, they'll pick it up. If you and your family just talk about it, they will come after you.
Yeah.
So obviously your phones, your watches, all the,
high devices.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny with all
Siri and
made
You
in
can,
China.
I mean, you can do everything. You can do
Google.
all those big companies.
yeah.
In the end, we have
So,
to trust
yeah, your
in not our
kids don't
ability
take
to
them home
avoid
anymore.
No,
those devices and things, but in reality,
it's
it's
not me that
ability
gonna fight.
to
Yeah.
protect
It's
us.
not me that gonna fight.
The same
Exactly.
as vaccine and
I'm
things
not
like
gonna
that.
bite my tongue.
I mean, we
For
can
sure.
resist it. If they actually physically come and, hold you down and jab you, what can you do?
Yeah.
What can you do?
We just need to be.
Bring it.
But talking about that, Philip and myself have been watching a television series on Stan, the 4400 on Stan, 4400 on Stan. It was the TV series started in 2004, ended in 2007. And this is all about people that was taken from the past and the present, taken to the future, but they were all brought back in the same
And they have a
time.
book of a prophecy and a
Book of
Messiah
prophecy,
Yeah.
Messiah, to see the face of God. But they also had
and restore paradise on earth.
they wanted to restore paradise on earth. That was so interesting.
4,400. 4,400.
What's so interesting is they've got promicelin that is
Injected into people.
into people that give them abilities.
And you either die or
because the
you
people
gain,
who came back
abilities.
got abilities.
make you powerful.
And this was this one girl, so they extracted this promicelin from her body, now giving it to everyone. Half of the people
die.
will die.
But it's a
The
good
other
thing
half
because they say they
will
must
have
die
abilities.
to create
But
a
they
new world.
used- Within this
World
television
population.
series was so interesting. They used the words quarantine, lockdown,
Even-
virus,
And this is
Coronavirus.
Coronavirus. And then in the background, because that's what I do if I watch television series.
And they had a big screen at the back.
I just read what's in the background, you know, the subliminal messages. They had a disease,
World hunger.
and all of that
Famines.
in the background.
Oh,
It's
right.
so interesting
Yeah.
because we've been
Predictive
through this.
programs.
Yes, because we've been through this, you actually pick up on all
Yeah.
these little.
I'm the same. I can't just watch anything anymore. I'm watching. It's
Every-
like a peripheral vision kind of goes
Yeah.
nuts. It's just, yeah.
I read something, there's a website called The Vigilant Citizen. And, and this, I think it's a man that does it, but he has been doing it for a few, like 10 years or something, where he points out the symbolism in movies, TV, you know, music, all that, and shows the satanic agenda behind everything. I don't know whether he's Christian or not. Sometimes he mentions prophecy from the Bible, but one of the latest articles was that last year there's a TV show like did you see that one? It's like where they do fashion design, the runway model. What's the TV show?
No,
Like a
Yeah,
reality
yes,
show.
I know what you're talking about.
Where they just get normal people, and it's like a reality show where they.
But they
design
teach, we
fashion
watch
design.
it, the fashion, that
Yeah, yeah,
fashion
yeah.
designing.
Yeah, and they had a contestant on there just last year. His name was COVID, but spelt with a K. And he designed, this guy's got a picture of it on the article. He designed an outfit. This was his fashion thing that he submitted, like this.
Hazmat suit.
No, it's a like what do you call it?
a bar.
Gingham.
No, it's
I didn't agree. That's not.
anyway, it's an outfit that's all the same fabric with a matching mask.
Ah,
Yeah,
Wow.
it was like before COVID. Yeah, last year, 2019, and his name was COVID
COVID.
with a K.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
they
didn't know
do.
that.
Yeah.
You know when Ricky Gervais did his Oscars thing, and at the time, I mean, I thought it was funny at the time. I don't think he's any what do you call it? I don't think he's. I think he's on the same team. Is what I'm trying to say. But he kept making jokes like those really kind of on the line jokes, and then he'd say, "It's all right. It's the last one. It's the last like as in this is the last. This is the last time we'll be gathering in this with me up here and you there, and
He's
you know."
just calling out all the.
No, I'm saying like, and this is before anyone knew anything about eternal lockdowns and things like that. Because before the
I
COVID.
think the reason why
Yeah.
he said that is because he knew that what he was going to say, they would never ask him to host anything again.
No, but I thought that too. But when you listen to it again,
Oh, right.
that's how you take it.
Yeah.
But he's not. He's talking about the whole thing. It's like the whole thing's ending. It's not him
Yeah,
and his.
right.
Yeah, because that's what I thought. And then I rewatched some clips. I'm thinking he's talking about the whole.
Assembling
And
and
also in the
Yeah.
they keep on talking about a new world,
Yeah.
and then they will say, well, the world has changed.
it will never be the same
It will
again.
never be the same again. We're now living in a new world.
Yes.
But it's very important that we all get
Yes.
the penicillin,
Yeah.
the jab.
Yeah.
Everybody needs
Everybody,
it.
the whole world
The
needs
whole
to get it.
must get it.
Yeah.
And half the people might die, but that's a good thing.
And it got
Yeah.
rolled out last week, this week in Britain. They rolled it out first.
Yeah, I know the
And,
Americans
Australia.
are starting to get their jabs this week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Americans.
Americans, yeah.
And there was literally articles saying, "Don't be alarmed if loved ones in nursing homes that pass away just in the days following." I didn't bother reading the rest of the article, but don't be alarmed. It's nothing. It's just a coincidence. Nothing to see.
But
here,
we're
just,
also
you know,
we're also shocked that people have been passing away in nursing homes from COVID.
it's a one-way trip to a nursing home. You don't go in and move back out.
Which country was it said we're going to try it first on prisoners?
Australia.
Oh,
Australia.
Yeah.
Prisoners? pregnant women.
Yeah, and the chronically
Chronically obese. Where does that come from?
Well, they said because you're
Sounds
you're
like the
up on the list of
4400.
immuno
Get rid of the
compromised.
No,
because
get
with
rid of
the
the
4400, it's all about get rid of the people who can't handle this.
Yeah.
So they will die,
Yeah.
and the world will be good because everybody will have.
you'll see the face of God.
You will be, that's
Paradise
right,
will
you will see
come
the
down.
face of God.
What movie is
Yeah.
that?
It's a TV series on Stan.
4400 on Stan.
4400.
season.
44.
Yeah, it's 4400.
We'll
4000.
talk about it.
Utopia thing we I couldn't watch it because it was too disturbing, but that was another recent one. Was it on Stan?
I think that's on Stan.
No, you and when last time I was here, you and Dad and I started watching it, and it's just full of predictive programming. Yeah, just bioweapons and all that kind of stuff. But we couldn't watch it because it was too violent.
Yes, they
Like,
do.
yeah.
It's like when you buy somebody a present and you're so excited, you can't wait till they get it, and you keep getting hints about it.
Yes.
You know how you do it.
That's exactly what
That movie that was, I think, was another Vigilant Citizen article. It's
They do think
it's
it's
coming
good.
out. Songbird. Oh my
Oh
god.
yeah.
When's that being released?